distinguished guests, my fellow speakers, the colleagues in the shipping industry, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm here to discuss the MLC challenges from the perspective of a crew manager. But before I do that, let me please allow me to introduce my company. Our company is a human resource company based in the Philippines with global operations in the ASEAN region, China, Eastern Europe, United Kingdom, North America, Latin America, sorry. Let me take my topic today, what I know best, the Philippine experience. Why Philippine experience? Because I know for a fact that many of you here are using Filipino crew. The Philippines, as we all know, is the leading provider of seafarers to the world fleet with over 350,000 seafarers around the globe. Our company has been in the business for supplying maritime manpower to its clients for over 40 years. We started as a shipping company, but our partners and friends in the industry approached us during the crisis in the 1970s to lend them some of our men. Our company has grown through the years and has built the strength of having a pool of competent seafarers from the Philippines, Indonesia, China, Eastern Europe, and the Latin America, which our partners could rely on. In the course of time, we built up our processes of deployment, which has evolved through the years from our own experience and from the evolution of regulatory regime for the recruitment and placement of seafarers created by the government we are operating. In the Philippines today, the government has provided a process that all recruitment contracts for seafarers who will work overseas go through the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, which some of you may know. There are steep penalties for violators in the Philippine law for a crime called illegal recruitment, and this is the same category as illegal traffic of human beings in the international practice. When the Maritime Labor Convention of the ILO was crafted, they looked to the Philippines as a reference when discussions turned into recruitment and placement. The conference recognized the level of maturity to the Philippine system on recruitment and placement that had evolved. The notable thing about the Philippines is that prior to the ratifications of the Maritime Labor Convention, it had in fact only ratified 5 of the 38 conventions, which were consolidated, which now comprise the Maritime Labor Convention of 2006. Despite this dismal performance in the ratification of the ILO Convention, the ILO conference copied the standard of the Philippines recruitment and placement, and is now what you see in regulatory in MLC Regulator 1.4 of the code. The Philippines itself encountered problems in the implementation. In the run-up towards its ratification of the convention, opposition was met so that the Philippines almost did not make it to the much coveted 30th slot, which brought the convention into force. So you may ask, where did the opposition came from? It came from the domestic maritime sector. The MLC does not distinguish labor regardless where the seafarer works and the type of vessel. It also created an equal living field for everyone. Practices in the domestic trade are quite different from the international sector, and I'm sure this is also true in other countries, especially in the third economies. To address this concern, a tripartite council composed of the representatives from the government, ship owners organization, represented by the crew managers ourselves, and the Seafarers Union discussed extensively the matter of exemptions and equivalencies. The MLC recognizes exemptions, equivalence, and flexibilities provided appropriate consultation is undertaken by the government with ship owners, seafarers organization, and the end result does not substantially deviate from the provision of Part A of the Code. Two major concerns were identified. Crew accommodations, particularly for vessels engaged in daytime or short voyages of less than 12 hours. And the second, the paid leaves. Because unlike seafarers in the international trade, those working in inter-island voyages can go home to their respective families at the end of the day, or at least once a week during their day offs. To address these two major concerns, the government issued regulations recognizing exemptions and equivalents such that short voyages had been exempted to suit the operations. Another novelty we have in the Philippines, which I understand is having difficulty in other flag states, is the tripartite process. The process requires consultation among the government, the ship owners, organizations of seafarers, regarding any matter that concerns any derogation, exemption, or flexible application of the provision of the MLC. We in the management sector has considered the tripartite process consultation conducive to consensus building, and it has helped us forge standard seafarers employment contracts for some of you are now using, and which are acceptable and implementable. This process is non-adversarial, where labor can bring to the table the economic and the welfare demands that can easily be resolved. It also facilitates resolution of issues of the three partners in the industry. During the preparations of the entry into force of the MLC, one which was subject to intensive discussion was the seafarers' medical examination. Regulation A.26 was considered the problematic by all partners. This provides that each medical certificate shall state, in particular, that seafarer concerned is not suffering from any medical condition likely to be aggravated by service at sea, or to render the seafarer unfit for such service, or to endanger the health of other persons on board. Many seafarers, as you know, upon reaching the age of 45 years old or more, usually suffer from degenerative diseases such as high blood pressure, diabetic, heart ailment, and other recurring illnesses. This medical condition is usually related to lifestyle on board or genetic illnesses. The effect is the third of such statement appearing in the medical certificate would be the rejection of many middle-aged seafarers who have the desired experience, knowledge, and competency to operate the ship, especially at this time where the shortage of competent officers and the war of talents continue to exist. The consequence of accepting such seafarers, or worse, the non-disclosure of medical condition, could result into the denial of medical claims and possibly increase incidence of adversarial litigation in convenient forums in order to pursue a medical claim. The tripartite process agreed to have an attachment of disclosure form to the medical certificate, which can be requested from the medical clinic. While the MLC allows the cost to obtain a national statutory medical certificate to be borne by the seafarer, many ship owners and managers require seafarers to obtain such medical certificate from a specific medical clinic. Under Philippine laws, if an employer does this, he is required to bear the cost of obtaining the medical certificate. Since the cost is borne by the employer, the Philippine authorities believe that there is effectively a waiver of non-disclosure right and gives the employer the right of access to information regarding the seafarer's medical condition as part of his pre-employment requirement. Another subject in the MLC is in the matter of cadets. The Philippines is recognized as a major source of seafarers. Its maritime education system requires a one-year shipboard training to complete the degree program. The international merchant fleet of the Philippines is small. Its domestic fleet, on the other hand, is seldom considered for shipboard training, and if a crew manager wants to build a pipeline of a competent crew, it must rely on its international fleet and employers to provide cadet berths for ship training. However, this may not be attractive to many of you because of cost. Very few berths were available for cadet training. Further, Seafarers Union have collective bargaining agreements which have provided for seafarers' wages and benefits. The Philippines, after extensive discussions on the tripartite process, a cadet training agreement. Some of you might be using this now. If not, please use this. Now in place, which sets forth the responsibility of this ship owner and the cadet in respect to the conduct of the cadet while undertaking the training program on board. The cadet is not engaged to work, but trained on board. This arrangement will allow the cadets to complete their academic degree requirements to ensure the continuous growth of the manpower supply. Perhaps one of the pressing challenges faced by crew managers is the crew competence and training. Philippines is a much desired source of seafarers, representing 30% of the world maritime manpower. The deployment of Filipino seafarers has continuously increased through the years, and this is attestation of their competency and training. There is a danger that the Filipino seafarer may lose its competitiveness, not because of his own incompetency, but because of uncertain system of education, training, assessment, certification systems adopted by maritime schools and training centers. Under the MLC, the measure used to determine the competence of seafarers is the regulation found in mandatory instruments of the IMO. The MLC, as the fourth pillar of international maritime law, makes reference and recognizes these mandatory instruments of the IMO as the basis for determining crew competence under MLC standards. The Philippines, by the way, will be audited on the fourth time by the European Maritime Safety Agency, EMSA, on October 7 to 24. What happens if the Philippines fails in this audit? Will the certificate issued by the Philippines will be recognized by you, mostly by the European members? This is a major challenge for the global shipping industry. However, we are positive that the Philippines can make it. The implementation of the MLC is at its infancy stage. We have experienced different issues since the implementations last August 20, such as enforcement of port state control, as we experience different views and interpretations of many port states on the provisions of the MLC. We are, with our industry, trying to slowly work our way up to, from the crisis level of 2008 and 2009, and even up to this time, with many ship owners still struggling, the prospect of having to spend significant cost to comply with MLC at this time is a major challenge. I wouldn't be surprised if there are still vessels out there who are not compliant even up till today. Not because they don't want to, but rather unable to find ways at the time. As far as we know, 2 ships have been detained for a clear violation of the convention. We also learned that the unions, local unions, international unions, are also doing their side, making sure that the ships, whenever they go into their ports, are inspected and in compliance to the convention. More issues will be encountered. As with all other maritime conventions, the MLC is not static, but a work in progress influenced by the interests of each state, the practices of players in the industry, the improvement of technology. New challenges will come, and we met again probably next year, and the same topics are discussed. I'm certain that new inputs will be provided to you. But for the meantime, we should be committed to operate within the spirit of the convention. One thing we do need to remember when dealing with our maritime labor, and I have said this time and again, we must change to meet the challenges of the global workforce. While ship owners may view their seafarers only as an item of cost, however, we all realize that seafarers are people with dreams to be fulfilled, and aspirations, and a fervent wish in their hearts to succeed in their chosen career. Thank you so much for listening.